Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman for yielding and ask unanimous consent for such time as I may consume to revise and extend. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The critically important legislation before us today is being presented as a bipartisan compromise, but nothing could be further from the truth. It was authored by the administration and by the Republican leaders of this Congress. As Chairman Hunter testified in the Rules Committee yesterday, no Democrats were involved in any way in the negotiations that were conducted over the weekend to produce this bill. Nor did the Rules Committee make in order any of the 15 amendments that Democrats offered to address the sections of the bill that most offend our democratic values and violate our most fundamental traditions. The closed rule governing this bill means that this Republican Congress is turning its back on a real debate here today. It is a reality made all the more egregious by the historic importance of this moment. We're at a crossroads today, and I fear that we will not be judged kindly by future Americans for what my Republican friends want to do to us today. The bill sends a clear message to both our friends and our enemies about what kind of people we are. It shows them whether or not we are really willing to practice what we preach about freedom and democracy and human dignity. It is moments like this one when we reveal our true colors and even our true values. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, those watching today will conclude that when the going gets tough, America's leaders are willing to abandon our values. Abandon them in favor of a thuggish tactics that they hope might make them safer for a little while. In his second inaugural address, our President used noble words to describe America's role in the world and its duty as a beacon of hope for all nations. He said, and I quote, "From the day of our founding, we have proclaimed that every man and woman on this earth has rights and dignity and matchless values," end quote. That might be disputed by the generations of persons held in slavery and by the women of America who had no say in anything or own standing anywhere, but nonetheless it sounds good. They're inspirational words, but here's the reality. For years the administration has circumvented our Constitution in the name of security. Its officials have dismissed even the most important of our legal documents, such as the Geneva Convention, as being nothing more as quaint. It was described that way by the President Attorney General, the Chief Law Officer, I might add. This administration and Republican Congress have allowed detainees to sit in prison for years without charging them with any crime. They are willing to deprive people of even the most basic due process rights that our country has always afforded those held by the government. They are willing to convict people of crimes without giving them any opportunity to review the evidence the government is using against them. They are willing to try to convict people based on unreliable evidence acquired through cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment that the rest of the world recognizes as torture. They are willing to allow government officials to degrade and torment other human beings in ways that civilized nations outlawed 60 years ago. They are even willing to take any new legislation that we pass today, make it retroactive, to protect people who have already committed torture so that past abuses will be forgotten instead of being sincerely addressed. What this Congress is showing the world today is that they are willing to trade our national birthright for a false and temporary sense of security. Let me emphasize that because it is indeed a false sense of security, Mr. Speaker. After 5 years of secret detentions, torture, warrantless surveillance, hyped up stories about weapons of mass destruction, are we any safer today from the threat of terrorism? The answer is no, we are not. In fact, as we learned earlier this week, our country's intelligence agencies informed the President a few months ago that we are actually less safe than we were in 2001. Mistreating our prisoners and depriving them of the basic due process rights of our legal system is not making us any safer. All it is doing is slowly wearing away at the fabric of our democratic society, undermining the essential nature that made us different from other countries. When we degrade and mistreat our prisoners, we degrade ourselves and the democratic values we have inherited from generations of brave and decent Americans. We are ceding the moral high ground from those who founded this country and the men and women who served it ever since, won with their blood, sweat, and tears. And what is more, legislation like this puts our soldiers at risk. During the course of the national debate on this issue, a number of prominent admirals, generals, and other military leaders have spoken out against this bill. They have told us time and time again that ignoring our American values puts our U.S. military personnel deployed overseas in danger. That falls on deaf ears here. They have said that respect for the rules of military engagement and prisoner treatment are more than just an important part of our heritage. They also protect Americans who are captured and imprisoned by foreign powers. Mr. Speaker, how is endangering our troops making us any safer? How is undermining our moral standard helping us win allies in the ideas that we face? The answer is simple: it is not. At this very moment, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people held in facilities whose fate will depend on this legislation. I want to take a moment to talk about one of them. Bilal Hussein is an Iraqi who worked as a photographer for the Associated Press. He is also a Pulitzer Prize winner. He has been held in Iraq by American forces for 5 months. He was accused of aiding and abetting the insurgency, but he has yet to be charged with any crime. He has been given no access to a lawyer or to a court and has not been able to see any evidence against him. The Associated Press has stood by him and repeatedly defended his innocence. We want to make sure he is alive. We will be writing the Secretary of Defense today to give us some information on this case. But under this bill, Mr. Speaker, Bilal Hussein could be declared to be an enemy combatant, sent to an American detention facility, and kept there indefinitely. No charges would ever have to be brought against him. His permanent detention would never have to be defended in a court of law. And imagine if another nation held an American citizen without charging him of crime. Imagine if he refused to allow him to even see the evidence against him. What would we say about such a country? And so I ask my friends on the other side of the aisle, what are we supposed to say about our country today? In his inaugural address again 2 years ago, the President had this to say about the soul of America, and I quote, "When the Declaration of Independence was first read in public and the Liberty Bell was sounded in celebration, a witness said it rang as if it meant something. In our time, it means something still," end quote. This bill gives the lie to that speech, and it gives the lie to what should be our nation's greatest asset, our greatest weapon in the fight against terrorism and oppression, and that is our values. I ask everyone in the House to reject this bill. I ask everyone here to chart a new course for America. If we reject torture, if we stand up for a legal system and fundamental rights that are the basis for liberty and the only real source of security that we have, then we will have come a long way in our battle against the threats our nation faces in the world today. My friends and colleagues, please don't turn your back on the past. It is in its lessons and principles that we will find the key to a safer and more just future. And I reserve the balance of my time.
From Oklahoma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just quickly want to note I'm very proud of my country. I'm proud that we extend protections to our adversaries that they do not